Thanks for coming to the Virtual Propane Expo. Super glad to have you here. We have a really special presenter for you today, and it's going to be all about the Pennsylvania Motor Truck, from the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association. But it's really going to be about something that we, as an industry, really need help in, and it's all about preparing for and surpassing roadside inspections. So we're really fortunate to have Dennis from the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association with us. He's an expert in safety as well as passing these types of roadside inspections. So he's going to walk us through really what we can expect and how we can do better in this area. And really appreciate you being here. So the concept is this, that all of us would like to reduce issues at roadside inspections, improve on the roadside inspections, and really have an inside scoop on what we can expect. And Dennis, as a retired special agent for the FMCSA, 30-year career in that division office, a federal program specialist overseeing day-to-day operations at the Pennsylvania Federal Enforcement Program. So as a specialist in this area, he's lived it and really can speak to us from a point of reference that can help us know what the other side is thinking and how we can really prepare ourselves so we don't have any issues. So obviously that can save us money, obviously it can save us issues and headaches. So that'll be great. So Dennis, again, thanks for being here.
Hello to everybody. Thank you. And what we're going to be discussing about are the roadside inspections and how to prepare for them. I'm in addition to being a retired special agent for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety, I'm also a retired Pennsylvania State Trooper. And once I had retired from both those, I'm now a consultant and offer, the DOT audits and et cetera, and doing accident reconstruction. Look at the screen, you look at the lower left corner, and there's a complex formula. What we're going to be talking about today is a quite easier formula than as you see there. In the whole purpose of the inspections, hey, it's part of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Program. And if you are not prepared, there can be all kinds of detrimental things that can happen to you, such as fines and compliance reviews. And the worst thing is obviously being placed out of service for the company here. The agenda, obviously, hey, what's the purpose of the inspections and why do you want to pass them? The various levels of inspections, and what can the motor carrier and the driver do? And to prepare, and what should I do if I'm selected? And after the inspection, what do I do? And if you're not satisfied with the results of the inspection or the inspector has made an error, should you data queue? And that becomes an important aspect to properly data queue. And the next slide will, we discuss the primary mission, and the primary mission are the Federal Motor Carrier Safety is a reduction of crashes, fatalities, injuries. And one of their methods used are the roadside inspections. In fact, it's the foundation of their program. And where does it all begin? Let's begin. Who can conduct these inspections? Well, they've got to be certified, and it's the special agents, the state police, DOT inspectors, sheriff officers, and municipal police officers. And they must be certified, and the certified inspectors, what can they do? Well, they're trained to properly inspect, and they can conduct the various levels of inspections depending upon what their certifications are. And they're authorized to complete the inspection reports, place the vehicles out of service, and driver, and authorized to upload to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which will then, depending upon the results of the inspection, increase your CSA scores if there's detrimental violations. But now the important thing is who can stop and issue these citations, and it's really any police officer. And that's a misnomer here. Well, how come you can stop me? Now, there's two different things here. If it's a non-MITSAP officer, they have to have reason to believe. It's called probable cause. If it's a MITSAP officer, it's going to be at a scale. They're going to pick every 10th vehicle. They're going to look for certain things hanging, dangling, things that they suspect that the vehicle and or driver are in violations. But the important thing to take away from this, that if the citations or warnings are not issued by a certified inspector, they won't be entered on your profile. In other words, they will not affect your CSA score. So where are these inspections going to be conducted? The most obvious ones, are going to be at the wait stations, port of entries, parking lots, and so on, or anywhere where the officer feels it's safe, roadside, ramps, and so on. And the objectives. Why are they doing this? Well, it makes a safer highway atmosphere, and it presents an opportunity for the motor carriers to evaluate, hey, how effective is their training? If your drivers are having driver violations as far as safety, fitness, hours of service, perhaps additional training. Vehicles are out of service and your CSA numbers are going up, additional training. So you evaluate your program, and an important aspect here that affects the motor carriers is the data is open to the public. You can just go in and you can look at the data, and most importantly is the insurance companies. And what companies are finding now, high CSA scores lead to increased insurance rates, and sometimes they will not be able to obtain insurance. They go out of business. And they also help in the selection of the feds who they're going to look at. Now, they are referenced in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, and Part 350 is where the states ensure they're conducted in a safe location and that the personnel that are conducting the audits and inspections meet the standards. And the next one is in hours of service, Part 395. If you're declared out of service, it tells what's the responsibility of the motor carrier. Bottom line, they do not drive, do not permit or allow. And Part 396 is the maintenance, who can conduct these inspections, and once the vehicle's been placed out of service, what are the responsibilities of the motor carrier? Now, the laws, there are pardon me, the programs as a direct result of the feds are the training. There's obviously other things, that drugs and so on, but the training that is required for the hazmat motor carriers and drivers, and the uniform inspections, and that's part of the foundation of the FMCSA programs. Just let's go through the inspection levels. Hey, we go through all these. You've seen all of these, and level 1 is the most comprehensive. And when you get to level 7, that's a jurisdictional. But the one I want to discuss about a few paragraphs here is the next one, which is level 8. And this is one that is new to many motor carriers. And if you would, let's say it's done on the fly. In other words, your vehicle does not have to be stopped. And when you look at all the data below, I put little red asterisks there. Where does all that data come from? The majority of it comes from the ELD. It's when the driver logs in and his license number, so on and so forth. It's got to be a valid medical because he's got a valid CDL. So these are the things that can be done on the fly. So how does this work? Either the officer can be sitting in the median and the vehicle passes by, and now the majority of the time it's conducted at a wait station, and this helps in the selection of the motor vehicle. If they have a problem with all those things that you look at, that is the ELD. So why is this important? Training for the drivers that they properly enter in the ELD information. And the big stuff, there's some big stuff here with the how can you prepare? And that's on the next slide here. And this is ensure that the numbers on the vehicle. Jeez, McGee, why are you bringing that up? Because thousands of times annually, it's a wrong DOT number. And the training, here's something new that you may not have heard. Yes, we do train. We train our drivers, and then we send them out on the road, and our scores are escalating. Why? Well, you need to practice, drill, and prepare them how to properly answer the questions, and how to conduct proper pre-trip, load securement, and for qualified drivers, make sure that they are qualified. Well, that means they can read and speak English. Can they safely operate the vehicle? Are they physically qualified? Say, well, why are we even talking about that? The reason why we're talking about it, because thousands of drivers are cited annually on the roadside inspections for not being physically qualified, expired medical card, or not having it with them. They're also cited thousands for not having a CDL or a operator's license. And the thing is, isn't that part of a pre-trip? And make sure they furnish you the list of violations and they're not disqualified. Yes, drivers are pulling up and being inspected that are under suspension. So, and make sure the drivers are road tested in a vehicle that you intend to assign them. And most importantly, because of hazmat and federal regulations require that you've got to train and ensure compliance. Now, there are three components here. Let's use the three-legged stool, the training, practice, and ensure. Let's just discuss training for just a second here. Over my careers that I've been involved in, I have attended and participated in hundreds of training programs. And many of them, majority of them, it's the one time that you can get all the drivers together and they're really pounded for one day. And just think of all the things that you pound into them, and you say, we've trained them. Well, you have presented material to them, but have they practiced? Do you practice, rehearse, prepare, and drill? So think about training, trying to get it all done in a day. You're trying to eat the whale in one day. How do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. And the last part of the stool is to ensure. And ensure compliance, ensure that your vehicles are properly maintained and your drivers are adequately trained. So my suggestion is use the KISS method for training. And that is just remember on these training sessions, a lot of times the president comes out, says, hey, thanks, glad you're here, chats for a while, HR chats, everybody's chatting with them. You give them all kinds of manuals and books, but really think about your training, keep it short, relevant, and on point. And the federal regulations, the hazmat, those are the sites that require you to do the training. So what do? Well, just if you had a bucket of water and every time you attempted to fill the bucket, 95% would leak out. How many times would you keep trying to fill the bucket? Well, let's talk about drivers' retention. Drivers retain approximately 90% when you teach them. They learn when they teach someone else, not when you teach them. I got to emphasize that point. And they use it immediately. And think about your ELDs. Many of the ELD sessions I've trained, you throw in the DVD, you step out, hour later, hey, you guys have been trained, you went out, and that's why there's so many violations out there with the ELDs. They got to use it immediately. So if you would, I suggest that when you are training, hands-on, 75% when they practice what they've learned, there's that term practice, 50%, get a group discussion going, 30% when they see a demonstration. And that demonstration is not when you get the DOT officer in and showing what he checks, demonstrate how to properly conduct a vehicle inspection. 30% what they learn from audio visual. Remember, you throw in the DVD and you step out of the room and have a smoke and you come back. 20%, 10% from reading, and 5% when it's just a lecture. And at these training sessions, I see people sleeping. I see them talking to one another. And one of the big things are they're texting to one another, texting to home, to their friends. And the deal is, look at those percentages. There's no way, if they're doing all these things while being trained, that even those percentages are going to be meet. So by properly using the three-legged stool, and here's an important point, just remember this, you'll be meeting 6 of the 11 safety fitness standards. And these are in Part 385. When the feds come in or the state police that are doing an audit, there's 11 safety fitness standards. And you're going to hit 6 of those standards. And the standards are, you know, your CDL, improper use and driving, so on. You're going to meet those 6. And if you're a hazardous material carrier, but you're going to also meet your hazmat training, the parking, driving rules, and hazmat regulations. So that leaves 3 for you. That would be financial responsibility, the unqualified driver we've talked about, and the accident register. So by properly training the drivers using the three-legged stool, you will meet almost 8 of the 11 safety fitness standards. Now, the next slide, we're not going to read all this stuff. The reason why I made this such a busy slide is that there's a lot of stuff that the drivers have to know about the ELD. And what I see out there, because I still train police officers as a civilian, I'm training them because I'm a retired state police officer, retired Fed. So I've been out there. I know what their side of it. And these are the things, again, low-hanging fruit, that the drivers are missing out there, and you're receiving citations. And all of it is part of the training. That's number 1. Number 2 is part of a pre-trip. And the next slide will tell you, hey, these are the items that are required to be in the vehicle. Look at, there's only 4 items. And they should be in a ditty bag, in a spot location. And all the driver has to do on a pre-trip is to look at them. Again, folks, this is one of the most easy hanging fruit. And I see, again, hundreds, thousands of these write-ups coming through every year for drivers missing these items. They don't have the user's manual and so on. Okay, so the big thing, how do you prepare before the inspection? Well, believe it or not, it is important. Keep it clean. And if yes, I was one of those guys as a state police officer and also as a Fed. I'm standing at the scales, trucks are coming, I'm drinking my coffee, eating the donut. What am I doing? I'm shopping. And the driver that has papers all over the dash and hanging in, guess what? Let's go to the back, Jack. We're going to have a little chat. And when I say watch your speed, I know you tell your drivers it, but you will see how important watching your speed is in a couple slides. And that's how you self-select. When you speed, you've been selected for an inspection. And again, there's a term, I just do not say inspect your vehicle daily, properly inspect it. And proper is going through and ensuring that the items that you should be looking at, you have looked at, and you're looking at them and letting the motor carrier know that there are things wrong or everything's okay. And hours of service, drivers got to have the clear understanding of how it operates and how to answer the questions posed by the DOT officer. And one of the write-ups that I see over and over again, and this is the motor carrier's fault, remember, when stopped, the driver must be able to take that ELD device, because it's got to be mounted securely up in the dash so he can see it. And then he's got to be able to hand it or show the officer with boots on the ground. And that's a regulation. A lot of people think it's just an interpretation. It is a regulation, and it's being cited over and over again. And why would I even say, make sure the documents are current, license, medical card, insurance, because again, there are thousands of these write-ups every day, and be able to provide the officer with the documents. So what do you do when the lights are behind you, the police lights, and you're going to be stopped? So the next slide, just we'll buzz through that one. And what do you do? Well, let's begin. And the next slide will go through the process. And you select a safe location. Well, wait a minute, I'm at a scale. Yeah, it's not always there. And remember, every time a truck is stopped, It may be a Barney Fife with the bullet in the t-shirt, with a bullet in the shirt pocket. And all he knows is he's afraid of the driver because that driver knows more than him. So he puts on the red light, he can't stop. So how do you notify the officer? Turn on the four-ways. Grit your teeth, go through it with grace. As the officer approaches, keep the hands on the steering wheel. Avoid the sudden movements. Don't reach for the documents until asked. Remember what's the climate that we're in now. If the stop occurs during the darkness, put the dome light on. You can ask why you're stopped, and here's where the orifice under the nose gets the driver in trouble. Be honest. Why was I stopped? I don't think you didn't stop for that stop sign. Instead of saying, oh, yes, I did, apologize. Geez, I'm sorry. I thought I did. Be respectful. Your attitude counts. Be organized. Be ready with the documents. Make them easy to inspect, to follow the instructions, and be polite. And remember, there's no quota for the citations, but there is a quota for inspections. And if you're out of service, notify your safety department ASAP. And importantly, as shown in the next slide, there's videotaping going on. So remember, all those things you're going to say you didn't say are there for posterity. So be polite, be respectful, something you won't be sorry for when you go to the magistrate's office, if you do. So on the next slide, we'll come in. When you enter a wait station, what do? Well, you follow the signs and the lighting and so on. And the one item, and it's highlighted, I know you're upset, I'm running late, I drank that extra cup of coffee, so you jam those brakes on the scale. Don't do that. Pull it around back, Jack, because we're going to chat. And have the documents ready. That's the important point here. And just think, if you hadn't jammed the brakes on, you'd be down the road there. Now, what are the most frequent vehicle violations? And you'll see those in the next slide here, is that look at this, and there's another row, and the reason why they're all in yellow, I want to bring it to your attention. I'm not going to read them all, but the deal is, those are all items that should have been looked at by a proper pre-trip inspection. And these are the ones that over and over and over again are written up, and you wonder, why are my scores going up? Geez, I have the drivers in, we train them annually, we train them quarterly, but remember how you eat the whale, one bite at a time. So it's maybe a smaller group of drivers. Is it costly? Well, if your CSA scores go up and you pay fines and you're put out of business, that's costly too. So proper training, and all those items in yellow are items that the driver should be looking at. And remember the three-legged stool. That's how you get it done. Training, practice, ensuring. And the most frequent driver violations: seatbelt, record of duty status, form and manner. Sure, there's still those graph logs out there, and the guys are not properly completing. Operating without a valid medical certificate. Look, that's a frequent driver violation. Isn't that part of the pre-trip? Isn't that part of the whole process? You're allowing an unqualified driver to be out there. False record of duty status. Operating without a CDL. And that is not, I didn't have it with me. You're required to have one and you didn't. No rods, no medical certificate in the possession. Rods not current. You don't have, there's those blank logs and graph logs that you need for the ELD, and failing to maintain the ELD instruction sheet. Basic stuff, but it's missed and it increases your scores. So let's go to the next slide and see what were the top. We just went through an Operation Safe Driver, and the top driver violations were speeding, driving too fast for conditions. There's that term, speeding again. Speeding, driving too fast for conditions. Number one, failure to use the seatbelt, failing to obey traffic control. Look at that. And it's a high number. You would be very surprised. And as you drive down the highway, you see many drivers. I see many car drivers, passenger car drivers, but I see many drivers using and texting and improper lane change. So why is this important to you? On the next slide. And this is very important. So it is, what can it lead to? Increased number of inspections. Remember, once your number's there, there's a on the inspector's laptop, it has red light, yellow light, green light. And as your numbers increase, it's a red light. Now that's the feds telling them, they're not demanding, but they're asking the officer, would you please look at this particular motor carrier? And then you're going to be a target for review. You're going to get onset rating, out of service order, the fines, loss of business, drivers, and increased insurance rate. And one thing on the nuclear awards, which is a big topic now, your driver may have done a bonehead maneuver. He changed lanes, crushed the car, severe injuries or fatalities. That does not lead to the nuclear award. All these other things that we're discussing, because you're going to talk about training and all this other, and your scores will work against you. And that's how you get the nuclear awards, is that all these things that we've talked about are brought up by the plaintiff. And you say, well, we're training our drivers. Well, tell me about the training. And we do this, we do that. But the scores will tell it all. And that's how these nuclear awards are arrived at. Okay, and the next slide we get into, and the purpose of this slide is just one thing. If you look at the last two, the number of out of service violations and the rate and the number of inspections are increasing. And with the increasing number, remember the three-legged stool of where you train, practice, and insure. Okay, now, just the next thing, I just want to breeze through here very quickly. These are the one on the left. This is the instructions given to the inspector. And he checks the first impression, so it's very important. Always prepare for the inspection. And you got to have the proper documents with you and endorsement. So as the officer goes through his checklist, the one on the right is telling what the driver should be doing. On the next sheet, remember, we're going to run through the 37. So on the next sheet will be more instructions given to the officer. If you follow to the next sheet, please. And you've got to listen to them and stay in the cab and listen to what the officer wants you to do. And remember, when he gets under that vehicle, make sure you know where he's at and listen for his voice or her voice, because when you're working a site, sometimes there's 3, 4, 5, 6 officers telling you to push down, go ahead, and all these different things, giving the commands here. Let's go to the next slide here. And most importantly here, it's just be aware of where the inspector is at and be ready to any of the commands. And on the last slide, for going through the procedure, it's just that as they go through in the steering, there's make sure the engine's running, because that's how the power steering. And the fifth wheel movement, very important to listen, because what they're going to do is have you set the trailer brakes and you're going to tug on it. And that the training for the drivers to be prepared must be done with the three-legged stool of training and then practice and ensuring. So what are the critical OutofSpection items? And again, I just highlighted them. I put them in yellow and I'm going to read them, but these are all items that the driver should be looking at. But guess what, folks? You're being written up all the time. So there's got to be something not being done right. And again, it's proper training and practice and ensuring. Okay, now, what are the driver out of service conditions? Again, don't have to read them. They're the common things like, well, my driver's doing that. Is he? As I look at and you will, we're all going to see the results of the last CVSA roadside inspections. You're going to see all these things popping up again. And when you think about it, they're advertised, they're coming, and yet the brakes are number one, and the drivers are missing all these documents, and you know you're being inspected. Just think if you didn't know. Geez, I wonder how high these rates with these out of service conditions would be. All right, let's go to the next slide. And after the inspection, what? Well, think of this. How come the mechanical defects were there? Why were the driver out of service violations there? So assess your training, because you want to take the steps to ensure, and it's a good word, safety culture of your trucking company. Remember, that's compliance, that's driver safety, doing all the things that they're required to do. And the training should also include all of the people involved with your transportation program, including the mechanics and the dispatchers. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, at the completion of the inspection, what do you do? Hey, obviously, if they're out of service items, get them fixed before you go. And if they're not out of service mechanical defects, repair before the next tour of duty. The next time, and remember, if you're on a cross-country trip, that doesn't mean at the end of the trip 1 week later, before that vehicle goes back out on the road again. And if you have the clean inspection, great job, and you completed using the three-legged stool, the training, practice, and ensuring. Now, what do you do on the data review or request for a data review? Well, motor carriers, obviously, they're going to, it's if you don't agree with the findings of the road inspection or an accident. Drivers, obviously, they can do on their PSP or also on their drug and alcohol. State partners, they're checking, they're the ones that when you data queue, they're the ones that receive the data queue or your complaint of what's the problem we are. They have to make that determination. And most importantly, the last one, many people are not aware of. Anyone can make a data queue. Anyone. And let me just use a quick example on this. Okay, if you're involved in a crash with a truck and you didn't think the investigation was done properly, you can data queue that. Any of the data that is in there that you don't agree with, you as the public, you do not have to be a motor carrier, a driver, insurance, they can also, they're the public in the industry, they can data queue. So anyway, let's move on. And how to request, you have your website, you obtain the PIN, and the type of request is going to be the crash, inspection event, so on. Supporting documents. This is a big one. Just think of this. I'm sitting there, you're complaining about something that one of my officers had done. Make it easy. In other words, if it's an inspection, scan the inspection. Yeah, but they have that. Wait a minute, make it easy for them. Do the inspection sheet. Whatever your evidence is, you may have pictures, you may have statements, you may have things, scan them all in so that when they open up your data queue, everything is there. They don't have to go scrambling, because I know what these guys go through. Hey, it's all there. When everything is there, if you would, it's kind of like a first impression. It helps out. Okay, and this document, how important is this document? Well, what is it? Well, it's the DVIR, Driver Vehicle Inspection Report. And I realize that the feds have said that you don't need to have your drivers report if they do not find anything wrong with the vehicle. Well, then I have a stack of clean DVIR's reports. But geez, you can buy a bunch of those vehicles because the drivers aren't finding anything. Apparently the vehicles are being maintained in a great shape. Not really. Now, I just want to point one thing out to you. If you do not have a bunch of these, and this is what I'm recommending, is that you continue to require the drivers to do it every day. Why? When the feds come in, or the state police, and they're checking on this, let's say all you require are the drivers to do their, only when they find, do the DVIR when they find a mechanical defect. Now, you may only have 3 or 4 to that vehicle in that month. Then the inspector goes to the maintenance records, the scheduled maintenance. He goes to other things and he finds things that the mechanics found or that the driver should have found and was not written up. You are quickly going to reach a critical violation of over 10% of these violations, where if you had a bunch of okay ones, you're not going to reach that. And that's one of the things I see happening across the nation. So it's my recommendation. It's for your consideration. Okay. And the review and passing and surviving, look, a proper and thorough pre-trip inspection, be prepared with all the documents that we talked about, and be able to provide the officer with the documents. And most importantly, ask him to point out, would you point that out to me? What is it, And the whole deal is, while you're pointing it out, if I don't understand it, or if the officer didn't write it down quite, explain it correctly, that you understand what the violation is. And the most important thing I want to see and I would like to see is that you pass. That's the whole deal. So with that, if there are any comments, questions, or anything, and if none, I would like to thank you for your time with this important topic.
Here's a question for you. If a fuel delivery company wants to get in touch with you to see if you can help them through this process, what are some services that you provide to help fuel delivery type companies?
Okay, great question, because this is a time of year that many are calling in and get prepped for the season. Number one, for drivers such as that, if it's just coming in and going over what they must do, in other words, sort of it's training. We will go through the training for them, and then from that, with a discussion with the safety department, maybe they'd like me to look at some of their documentation, whatever they're having problems with. But most importantly, you ask a great question, Bill, is that for these carriers that transport, let's say, their home deliveries, what must a driver do every time he stops? Well, he obviously going to make his delivery and put up the hoses again, and must check the tires, which is a requirement. And I always get those, oh, geez. But hey, listen, guys, it is a requirement, and it's part of the thing that you must do. It doesn't take that much, but it's part of the requirements as you transport your hazardous materials. So yes, we do that, and we do the accidents and mock audits, and if hopefully not involved in a crash, but we can do the crash analysis, and we have people that, depending on the seriousness, we can do animations, and we can do just about everything that's a motor carrier would need.
Okay, great. Now we're entering fall. I mean, we're in fall now. So from your experience, what would you recommend based on this season that fuel delivery companies be doing different or preparing for the fall and winter?
Well, one of the things, and obviously this is the something we always go over in the fall. What do we have? Well, I realize we have the pandemic and everything, but generally in the fall you have the school buses, you have leaves on the road, wet leaves, wet surfaces. So obviously your stopping distance will be increased. And as you near the holiday seasons of, obviously Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that, you have shoppers that have a lot of other things on their mind. So you got to be much more watchful with what goes on out there, and be prepared, especially the home delivery fuel haul transporters. Be prepared that sometimes you just can't make it up a certain road, and you may have to bring in a smaller vehicle or something to service your customers. So that's another thing. Homeowners, sometimes if they don't have a delivery that's just automatic, they wait till the last minute, and then the next thing they're screaming, hey, I need it. And the snow is blowing, there's all kinds. And so those are some of the things you have to be prepared for.
Excellent. All right. Dennis, thanks so much. I appreciate it. You put your contact information here on the screen. Also, for everyone that would like to get in touch with Dennis, you can go right to the Virtual Propane Expo. You can go to him as one of the presenters. He'll be moved into, as everyone today will, as of tomorrow, will be moved into the past presenters area. So you can reach out to Dennis from there too. So you can get in touch with him through the Virtual Propane Expo, or as he, through D McGee, McGee LLC at Verizon.net is the email address as well. Dennis, thanks so much for being here. It is really great information. Obviously, you know this stuff cold, and it's really critical information that all of us in the fuel delivery industry need to know. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bill, and thank the Virtual Propane Expo.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, hey, everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the Virtual Propane Expo. Our next expo will be next month, and look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.